I still remember the exact moment my world shifted on its axis. It was a Tuesday afternoon in March, and I was standing in the kitchen of our suburban home in Atlanta, still wearing my mechanic's uniform with grease under my fingernails. The smell of motor oil clung to my clothes like it always did after a long day at Thompson's auto shop. I'd been working there for 15 years, ever since Maya was 3 years old, building transmissions and fixing engines to keep food on our table and a roof over our heads. Maya burst through the front door with that teenage energy that could either light up a room or destroy everything in its path. At 17, she was beautiful, tall like her mother had been, with those same bright eyes that used to look at me like I hung the moon. But lately, those eyes held something different, something that made my chest tight every time I caught her looking at me. "Dad, I need to talk to you," she said, dropping her backpack by the door with that careless thud that always made me wince. I turned from the sandwich I was making, wiping my hands on a dish towel. "What's up, baby girl?" I asked, using the nickname that used to make her smile. Now it just made her roll her eyes. She stood there for a moment, shifting her weight from one foot to the other, and I could see she was building up to something. That's when I knew whatever was coming was going to hurt. "Dad, I need you to stop picking me up from school." The words hit me like a punch to the gut, but I tried to keep my voice steady. "What do you mean? I thought you liked our rides home. We talk about your day, stop for ice cream sometimes." "That's just it, Dad." Her voice was getting stronger now, more confident in her cruelty. "You embarrass me in front of my friends. Your truck is loud and rusty. You're always covered in grease, and you smell like what, Maya?" My voice was barely above a whisper. "Like a garage. Like someone who works with his hands." The way she said it made it sound like a disease. All my friends' parents drive nice cars and wear suits. They're doctors and lawyers and business people. And then there's you, showing up looking like that. I felt something break inside my chest. Not just hurt. I'd felt hurt before. This was different. This was shame mixed with rage, mixed with a kind of devastation I didn't know existed. I looked down at my uniform, at the name patch that read Marcus in bold letters, at the honest stains that came from honest work. "Maya," I said slowly, "this is how I provide for you. This job, this work you're ashamed of, it's what pays for your clothes, your phone, your college fund." "I know that," she snapped, and for a moment she looked so much like her mother when she was angry that it took my breath away. "But can't you just, I don't know, change clothes before you pick me up? Or maybe I could just take the bus." "You want me to take the bus so you don't have to be seen with your father. Don't make it sound worse than it is." "How exactly should I make it sound, Maya? Because from where I'm standing, it sounds like you're ashamed of me, ashamed of who I am and what I do to take care of you." She looked away then, and I could see tears forming in her eyes. But instead of softening, instead of taking it back, she doubled down. "Maybe I am, okay? Maybe I am ashamed. All my friends' parents went to college. They have careers, not just jobs. They don't come home dirty every day. When Sarah's dad picked us up last week in his BMW, she didn't have to explain why he looked like he belonged in our neighborhood. But you, God, Dad, sometimes I just wish you were different." The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the refrigerator humming, the neighbor's dog barking 3 houses down, the sound of my own heart breaking. I'd been a single father since Maya was 5, when her mother died in that car accident. I'd given up everything. My dreams of going back to school, my social life, dating, everything, to make sure Maya had what she needed. I worked overtime when she needed dance lessons, picked up weekend shifts when she wanted to go on school trips. I'd been both mother and father to her for 12 years, and now she was telling me I wasn't good enough. "I see," I said finally. My voice sounded strange, even to my own ears. Hollow. Empty. You're ashamed of me. Dad, I didn't mean... No, you meant exactly what you said. You're embarrassed by your father who works with his hands to provide for you. You want me to change who I am so your friends will think better of you. I took off my name patch and set on the counter. The small gesture felt enormous. You know what, Maya? You're right. I am embarrassing. I'm just a mechanic who didn't go to college, who comes home dirty, who drives a truck that's seen better days. I'm not a doctor or a lawyer or whatever it is your friends' parents do. I'm just a man who loves his daughter and has spent the last 12 years trying to be enough for her. I walked past her toward the stairs. From now on, you can take the bus. Or better yet, ask one of those impressive parents you admire so much for a ride. Dad, wait. But I was already climbing the stairs to my room. I closed the door behind me and sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my reflection in the dresser mirror. I saw what Maya saw, a 42-year-old black man with calloused hands and permanent grease stains under his fingernails. My hair was starting to show gray at the temples. My face was lined from years of worry and hard work, and my shoulders were permanently bent from leaning over car engines. For the first time in years, I felt truly alone. That night, I made a decision. If Maya was embarrassed by me, if I was such a disappointment to her, then maybe it was time to give her what she wanted. Maybe it was time to disappear. I didn't mean literally, of course. I couldn't abandon my daughter, but I could step back. I could become invisible in her life. Let her pretend I was someone different, or better yet, let her pretend I didn't exist at all. The next morning, I left for work before she got up. I left money for lunch on the counter with a note that simply said, "For school, no, have a great day, baby girl. No, love you." Just the basic necessities she needed from me. When I came home that evening, she was in her room with the door closed. I made myself dinner and ate it alone, listening to the sounds of her talking on the phone with her friends. I could hear her laughing, hear her being happy, and I realized I hadn't heard her laugh like that when I was around in months. This became our new routine. I became a ghost in my own house. I provided what was necessary: money, food, a roof over her head, but I stopped trying to connect. I stopped asking about her day. I stopped offering rides, stopped suggesting ice cream runs, stopped trying to bridge the gap that had opened between us. Maya seemed relieved at first. She could bring friends over without worrying about me embarrassing her. She could talk about her life without having to include me in it. She got what she wanted, a father who stayed in the background. But something strange started happening. The more invisible I became, the more she seemed to notice my absence. I'd catch her looking at me sometimes with an expression I couldn't read. Once, I heard her on the phone with her friend Sarah. "No, my dad's working late again," she said. "He's always working now." There was a pause, and I don't know. He used to pick me up from school, and we'd talk about stuff. Now I haven't really talked to him in weeks. Another pause. Yeah, I guess I did ask him to stop picking me up. But I didn't mean... She trailed off, and I moved away from the door before I could hear the rest. Months passed like this. I threw myself into work, picking up extra shifts, staying late to avoid the awkward silence at home. Maya and I became like roommates who barely acknowledged each other's existence. I provided, she took what she needed, and we both pretended this was normal. Then came the night that changed everything. I was lying in bed around midnight when I heard crying coming from Maya's room, not just sniffling, deep, heartbroken sobs that made my chest ache. Every instinct in my body told me to go to her, to hold her like I used to when she was little and had nightmares. But I stayed in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to my daughter cry herself to sleep. The next morning, her eyes were red and swollen. She sat at the kitchen counter, picking at a piece of toast, and for a moment she looked like the little girl who used to crawl into my lap when she was sad. "Dad," she said quietly. I looked up from my coffee. "What?" "Never mind." She shook her head and grabbed her backpack. "It's nothing." But it wasn't nothing. I could see it in her face, hear it in her voice. Something was wrong, and for the first time in months, she'd tried to reach out to me. And I'd shut her down just like she'd shut me down all those months ago. That day at work, I couldn't concentrate. I kept thinking about the look on her face, the sound of her crying, the way she'd said, "Dad," like she was testing whether I was still there, whether I still cared. I left work early and drove to Maya's school. I parked across the street and watched as students poured out of the building. I saw Maya walking with her friends, Sarah and Jessica, and a few others I recognized. They were all laughing about something, but Maya looked distant, distracted. Then I saw something that made my blood boil. A group of boys were walking behind them, and one of them, a tall kid with expensive clothes and that kind of confidence that comes from never being told no, reached out and grabbed Maya's backpack, spinning her around. "Hey, Maya," he said loudly, "is it true your dad's just a janitor or something?" Maya's face went bright red. "He's not a janitor. He's a mechanic." The boy laughed and his friends joined in. "Same difference. My dad says people like that are why our neighborhood's going downhill. Blue-collar workers moving in, bringing down property values." I was out of my truck and across the street before I knew I was moving. "Is there a problem here?" I asked, and my voice carried that edge I'd learned in the Army, the tone that said I wasn't asking. The boy turned to look at me, and I saw the exact moment he took of my appearance. My work clothes, my dark skin, my hands that showed every year I'd spent working for a living. His smirk faltered for just a second, then came back stronger. "No problem, sir," he said, putting emphasis on the last word in a way that made it sound like an insult. "We were just talking to Maya about career day. My dad speaking. He's a hedge fund manager. Makes more in a month than most people make in a year." "Congratulations," I said evenly. "I'm sure you're very proud." "We are." The boy puffed up his chest. "What about you? What are you going to speak about?" "Oil changes." I felt that familiar surge of anger and shame, the same feeling I carried around for months since Maya had told me I embarrassed her. But this time, something was different. This time, I looked at my daughter and saw her face. Maya looked mortified, but not because of me. She was staring at this boy with disgust and anger, and when she spoke, her voice was steel. "My father," she said clearly, "rebuilt the engine in Mrs. Patterson's car when she couldn't afford to buy a new one, so she could keep getting to work. He stays late to help people who can't afford to pay full price for repairs. He worked 16-hour days to pay for my school supplies and dance classes and everything else I ever needed. And he did it all by himself after my mother died when I was 5 years old." The boy's smirk was completely gone now. "So no," Maya continued, "he's not going to speak about oil changes. He's going to speak about integrity and hard work and putting your family before yourself. Things you obviously wouldn't understand." She turned to me then, and her eyes were filled with tears. "Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The boys mumbled some excuse and walked away quickly. Maya's friends stood there looking uncomfortable, and after a moment, they made their own excuses and left. It was just Maya and me, standing on the sidewalk outside her school. "Maya," I started. "No, let me finish," she said, wiping her eyes. "I was horrible to you. I said terrible things, and I hurt you, and I'm ashamed of myself. Not of you, of me. I was so worried about what people thought that I forgot who you are, what you've done for me. Sweetheart, I've been miserable, Dad, these past months, not talking to you, not having you in my life. I missed you so much. I missed our drives home from school. I missed you asking about my day. I miss feeling like I matter to someone, like someone cared enough to show up for me. The tears were flowing freely now. And last night, when I was crying, I wanted to come to your room so badly. I wanted you to hold me like you used to when I was little. But I thought you hated me. I thought I'd ruined everything between us. I stepped forward and pulled her into my arms then, holding her tight against my chest while she sobbed. She felt so small, so fragile, nothing like the confident teenager who'd been so cruel to me months ago. I could never hate you, Maya. I whispered into her hair. You're my daughter. You're my heart walking around outside my body. I was hurt. Yes, I was angry. But I never stopped loving you, not for 1 second. I'm so sorry, Daddy, she cried, using the name she hadn't called me in years. I'm sorry I was ashamed of you. I'm sorry I made you feel like you weren't enough. You're everything, Dad. You're everything to me. We stood there in the middle of the sidewalk, holding each other and crying, not caring who saw us or what they thought. For the first time in months, we were father and daughter again. That night, we sat at the kitchen table and really talked. Maya told me about the pressure she'd been feeling to fit in, how her friends' casual comments about their parents' careers had made her self-conscious about mine. She told me about boys like the one from school who made her feel like she had to apologize for where she came from. I told her about my own insecurities, how her words had hit me in a place that was already vulnerable. I told her about growing up poor, about being first in my family to graduate high school, about how I'd always felt like I was faking my way through life, pretending to belong in places I didn't. But you do belong, Dad, she said fiercely. You belong everywhere. You're smart and kind, and you work harder than anyone I know. You raised me by yourself, and you did an amazing job, even when I was too stupid and selfish to see it. You're not stupid, sweetheart. You're 17. Being 17 means making mistakes and figuring out who you are. I just forgot that for a while. We both agreed that we needed to do better. Maya promised to remember that there was no shame in honest work, that a man is measured by his character, not his job title. I promised to remember that she was still growing, still learning, and that her mistakes didn't define her or us. The next day, I picked her up from school in my rusty, loud truck. She climbed in with a huge smile and immediately started telling me about her day. As we pulled away from the curb, I saw some of her classmates watching, including that boy from the day before. Maya saw them too, and she rolled down her window and waved enthusiastically. Bye, guys. See you tomorrow. Then she turned to me with a grin that reminded me of the little girl she used to be. Dad, can we stop for ice cream? I want to hear about your day too. As we drove toward the Dairy Queen, talking and laughing like we hadn't in months, I realized something important. I hadn't needed to change who I was to earn my daughter's respect. She just needed to grow up enough to understand who I'd always been. Sometimes the best way to show someone your worth isn't to become someone different. Sometimes it's to step back and let them realize what they're missing when you're gone. But the most important thing is being there when they're ready to come back home. Maya never asked me to stop picking her up from school again, and I never again forgot that being her father, grease-stained hands and all, was the most important job I'd ever have.